Alright, so it's time to kick your prep into high gear. Today I've got something really special lined up for you. I am Shwetang. I scored a 1550 on the digital SAT and a perfect 800 on the SAT math section. So let's dive right in.
The next topic we'll look at is isolating quantities. So we would be given an equation, usually some topic from science, with a lot of wordings, very verbose. It used to be far more complex and verbose on paper SAT, but with College Board indicating that on digital SAT the questions will be far less verbose, it's now slightly less verbose. But to solve these questions, what you are basically looking to do is isolate one quantity. For example, we all know this equation F equals m times A, and let's say we want A isolated. We want something where A is on the left side and we have some expression which is equivalent to A in the other quantities. So using F and M, we want an equation where A is isolated on the left side and everything else is on the right side. Okay, how would we do this? So F equals m times A. Let A remain here. So A equals F by m, right? As simple, right? So A can be expressed as force by mass. Now, as I said, a lot of these questions would be verbose. You can simply skip all of that. Just look at what is the equation and what do you want to isolate and start working on it. That way you would save a lot of time. For example, in this one, it talks a lot about using this formula of kinetic energy. But all we need is V in terms of EK and N. You don't even need to read the actual question. If you just look at all the answer choices would have V equals something. So you know that you want to isolate V in terms of everything else, right? So let's start doing that. So let's keep V square here and take everything on the other side. So when you multiply both sides by 2, you have 2 EK and this one goes away. And then you divide both sides by M, right? So we get V square equals 2 EK by M. Now V would simply be the square root of this expression, 2 EK by M, and that would be the answer. So all you need to do is identify what are you trying to isolate and just go ahead and do that. Let's do a couple of questions on isolating quantities. The first one here gives a formula for gravitational force. Now, as I've said earlier, we don't need to concern ourselves with reading everything given in the question. Let's just focus on what does it want. It wants us to express D in terms of all the other quantities. And if you notice, all the options have D on the left hand side. So we basically need to do certain operations and bring D on the left hand side and everything else on the right hand side. Okay, so let's start by doing that. So let's take D square here, right? So this becomes G m1 m2 and we bring F on the right side. Okay. Now this is D square and not D. So all we need to do is take a square root. G m1 m2 by F. This expression doesn't change, right? So D is the right answer. Let's look at problem 2. Again, this gives us a very complex linear equation, talks about multiple choice questions, free response questions, but we don't need to concern ourselves with any of this. All we need is M. How do we know that? It says which of the following equations correctly gives the number of correct multiple choice answers. You don't even need to read all of this. Just see that all the options have M on the left hand side, right? So we quickly need to figure out how do we get M on the left hand side and everything else on the right. So we subtract both sides by this expression. So C minus 1.2272M equals 3.0556 F. And let's take C here. So minus 1.22 whatever M equals 3.0 whatever F minus C. Now let's just divide everything by this coefficient so that we get M. So M equals 3.0556 F minus C divided by minus 1.2272, right? So if we take minus up, we'll get C minus 3.0556F by 1.2272, which seems similar to or is the same as A here, right? So this becomes the right answer. Let's do a couple of more questions on this topic. Problem 3 states blood volume has something that can be determined, but again, all we are concerned with is finding what is H in terms of the other two things, VB and VP, right? Just notice that everything here has H on the left side. So let's start bringing H on the left side. If we take this whole denominator up, this becomes VP and we bring VB down. Okay, so 1 minus H is VP by VB. Now let's take 1 here. So minus H is VP by VB minus 1. And we multiply both sides by minus 1 to make this positive. So H is basically 1 minus VP by VB, right? So A is the right answer. 1 minus VP by VB. Problem 4 looks slightly more complicated. There is a radical sign already, but we again need to follow the same thing. It has something to do with speed of light, other things, right? But let's not concern ourselves with reading this whole question. All we need is to bring V on this side. So let's first isolate what's inside the radical sign. So root of 1 minus V square by C square. Let's take S to the other side, becomes L by S. Now if you have the expression inside the radical isolated on one side, you can simply square this side, right? So this becomes 1 minus V square by C square, but you'll also have to square this side. So that becomes L square by S square. Okay, now we need to isolate V. So let's first get 1 here. So minus V square by C square is L square by S square minus 1, right? We subtracted 1 from both sides. Let's flip the negative sign first. So V square by C square is 1 minus L square by S square. And then let's take C square to this other side. So V square is C square into 1 minus L square by S square. Now we have V square but not V, so we need to take a square root on both sides. So square root of V square would take us to V. What's left here is C square, because we are multiplying two expressions. So when we take a square root, we can take a square root of this multiplied by square root of this. So square root of C square is nothing but C, and square root of this whole expression is 1 minus L square by S square, square root of this. Right, so this is what we are looking for. Let's see if any of the options are the same. So V equals C times under root of 1 minus L square by S square. So A itself is the right answer.